You take the blonde one, and I'll take the one with the turban.
Oh, please.
Stop that!
Comedy classics are often remembered for their perfect timing and flawless delivery. But what if the best moments weren't planned at all? Young Frankenstein, Mel Brooks' black-and-white masterpiece, is filled with accidents, slip-ups, and spur-of-the-moment improvisations that somehow made it even funnier. From props that mysteriously disappear to lines that sent the cast into unstoppable laughter, the mistakes became part of the magic.
Let me smell your breath.
Why, look. You haven't even touched your food.
There! Now I've touched.
And one unedited photo, captured in pure chaos, still sparks curiosity decades later. Ready to see how these accidents turned into gold? Let's dive into 20 unforgettable bloopers from this comedy classic. Number 20. The iconic bag scene blooper. One of the funniest and most unforgettable bloopers from Young Frankenstein happened in the now iconic bag scene. When Dr. Frederick Frankenstein, Gene Wilder, and his assistants arrive at the castle, he politely asks Igor for help with the luggage. The script called for a straightforward response, but Marty Feldman, who played Igor, decided to throw in a cheeky, unscripted line. "You take the blonde, and I'll take the one in the turban." The cast and crew were not ready for it at all. Terry Garr almost broke into laughter as the character she played, Inga, while Wilder visibly struggled to maintain composure. Over and over again, this scene was filmed by the crew, and yet Feldman continued to sneak the line in, and each time it happened, he delivered it just slightly differently. The audience would roar with laughter, as Wilder's efforts to stifle his chuckles only made the moment even more enjoyable. Mel Brooks adored it to the point of preserving the blooper, and thus became one of the most quoted moments in the whole film. The simple entrance scene turned out to be one of the most talked-about comedic gems. Not bad. That was pure improv genius, caught for all time in film. Just when you think the laughs can't get bigger, the next blooper proves you wrong. Number 19. The hump that kept moving. Marty Feldman's Igor is remembered for his big eyes, crooked smile, and of course, his mysterious hump. But here's the kicker. The hump joke wasn't actually in the script at all. During early filming, Feldman decided to move Igor's hump from one shoulder to the other, just to see if anyone on set would notice. At first, nobody said a word, but Gene Wilder quickly caught on and couldn't keep a straight face. Every time the camera rolled, Feldman would mischievously switch the hump's position, and the gag became an ongoing prank throughout the shoot. Mel Brooks eventually caught on that Feldman was actually doing the bit, and he went along with it, allowing the hump joke to live on as one of the most mild yet hysterical elements of the film. Audiences tend to think that this is the result of a well-written gag, but, in fact, it came from the spontaneous improvisation of Feldman. His playful ridicule led to one of Young Frankenstein's most permanent sight gags. Proof once again that the best funny moments are the ones that come completely improvised. The moving hump was transformed from a blooper to become fully part of the film's legacy, entirely thanks to Feldman's offbeat genius. Number 18. The Candlestick Mistake. One of the most charming bloopers that slipped past audiences involves a simple candlestick. In the film, Dr. Frankenstein and Inga carry a candle while moving through the castle's secret passageways. It was supposed to build tension in a parody of old horror movies, but sharp-eyed viewers will notice something strange. The candlestick suddenly vanishes between shots. In one frame, it's firmly in hand, lighting their way. In the very next moment, it's gone, as if it disappeared into thin air. This was not intentional, but rather pure continuity chaos in the making. The production was going fast, and props would sometimes get lost in the shuffle of many takes. Instead of redundant reshoots, perhaps Mel Brooks decided not to touch it, thinking it wouldn't spoil the mood too much, but it actually adds to the humor of the scene. It really looks like that editing gaffe that would be too obvious for a non-abridged horror movie, the very genre Young Frankenstein spoofed. Fans noting this Candlestick error will often argue that it manages to merge nicely with the parody style, making it seem intentional. Whatever view you take, whether you think of it as an error or a clever wink towards lousy filmmaking, is one of those little details that go to show how even mistakes could charm a movie. Number 17. Wilder broke character. During Sedagive, the sedative scene is one of the most quoted moments in Young Frankenstein, and it hides a hilarious blooper that made it into the final cut. In the script, Dr. Frankenstein is supposed to command Igor to administer a sedative to the monster. But when the cameras rolled, Marty Feldman twisted the line into his now legendary delivery. Sedagive? The bizarre pronunciation wasn't planned. It was Feldman riffing off the script in the heat of the moment. Gene Wilder just wasn't ready for it. The moment Feldman blurted, "Sedagive!" wide-eyed, Wilder's face broke into a grin that he was fighting really hard to suppress. He's meant to be all intense and serious, but you can see him just holding back laughter with that dollop of craziness. Mel Brooks had a thing for the natural and spliced, no cut. In his words, the impromptu moment made the scene all the more special. Fans have puzzled over whether the line Sedagive was scripted or not for years, but he was the pure maverick Feldman, according to the cast. What started as a real off-camera blooper turned into the most loved lines of the entire movie. It's a perfect example of how the chemistry between Wilder and Feldman turned accidents into gold, giving audiences a moment of comedy that feels both raw and timeless. Number 16. Inga's slip in the hay. The roll in the hay scene is one of the cheekiest moments in Young Frankenstein, and it also hides a small but hilarious blooper. Terry Garr, who played the charming and quirky Inga, was supposed to deliver her lines while bouncing around energetically in a hay wagon. The gag was meant to emphasize her playful innocence, but shooting the scene wasn't as smooth as it looked on screen. She slipped a bit on one take while trying to balance on the hay. It was not really a fall, but her timing went haywire with it. Instead of dropping her character, Garr managed to improvise so well beyond her lines, adding the tumble to what was happening as though it were a part of the scripted performance. The crew members then held their laughter because she had turned a ruined take into something very funny and natural. Mel Brooks has opted to keep the slip in because he felt it added realism. It captured Garr's endearingly clumsy fall and infused the whole movie with that touch of quirkiness, thus making Inga even cuter. Just another outtake took an unexpected turn and became one of those quiet little happy flukes, which gave the whole film that extra special charm. Number 15. The Puttin on the Ritz chaos. Few scenes in Young Frankenstein are as unforgettable as the Puttin on the Ritz musical number. Gene Wilder fought hard to keep it in the script, even though Mel Brooks initially thought it was too silly. Wilder was convinced the absurdity of Frankenstein and his monster performing a Broadway routine in tuxedos would elevate the comedy to legendary status, and he was right. But behind the scenes, filming that sequence was pure chaos. Peter Boyle struggled with his timing during the performance as the monster. In several takes, he missed his cue entirely, or garbled the line in an exaggerated growl. As a result, the cast and crew would dissolve into uncontrollable laughter. Wilder himself could hardly keep his face straight listening to this man belt out the word Ritz in a booming, off-tune voice. The endless laughter made shooting drag on for much longer than anticipated. but Brooks ultimately embraced the chaos. It went from what was almost a cut idea to one of the defining moments in the history of comedy. The fact that it would affect several takes ruined by genuine laughter makes it even funnier. Puttin' on the Ritz is not just a classic, but also an embodiment of how terrific disorder contributed to the brilliance of young Frankenstein. Number 14. The Door That Wouldn't Close. On the surface, it seemed like a simple setup. Dr. Frankenstein enters the laboratory, closes the heavy wooden door behind him, and continues with his lines. But on set, that massive door had a mind of its own. During one take, the crew tried to stage the moment perfectly. Yet, when Wilder attempted to shut it, the hinges jammed halfway. The result was an awkward pause as the door stubbornly refused to budge. Wilder, meeting all conditions of consummate professionalism, did not break into character. Instead, the stumble lent itself to the uproarious part of his performance as Wilder feigned exaggerated frustration at the situation. The innate ability of Wilder to collapse against error only added to the humor of the scene, in that now even the background seemed to be out to get him. The crew, meanwhile, could scarcely hold their laughter, and Mel Brooks was to realize he really loved these snafus because it got the whole set motley diverse energies. Brooks chose to keep the failed take for footsteps. Most random things that went wrong and were kept contributed to young Frankenstein's comedic charm. It was never the actors alone versus laughter. Old, and the sound stage too, was in deep conspiracy to leave no cartoon stone unturned in search of gold. Number 13. The Follow Me Please line break. Marty Feldman's Igor was unpredictable in the best possible way, and one of his funniest unscripted moments came during a scene meant to play out seriously. As Dr. Frankenstein introduces his assistants and prepares to lead them through the castle, Igor randomly blurts out in a bizarrely formal tone, "Follow me, please." The line wasn't in the script, and the way Feldman delivered it, with an exaggerated bow and cartoonish flair, caught everyone off guard. Gene Wilder tried painstakingly to maintain the calm dignity of Frederick Frankenstein, but the flickering twitch of his lips told the other story, just as he was trying to hold it in. Or this moment could very well spill over into its own left side of lunacy, and that is precisely why it is so funny. Amor fati. Instead of yelling, "Cut," Mel Brooks took a chance to roll the camera, thrilled with how naturally Feldman's mischief played with the scene. Eagle-eyed fans can pick up on Wilder's own oscillating eyeball movements, almost as if Wilder were trying to assure his own composure, working himself not to burst out into laughter right then and there. It is these moments, the bloopers, that made it into the final cut indeed, one of those delightful little nuggets down the line, memories, whose spontaneous genius creation made young Frankenstein special. Feldman's unpredictability was not just for laughs. It kept everybody else on their toes, producing a life and unscripted comedy. Number 12. The horse sound effect. One of the most running gags in Young Frankenstein is the terrifying reaction of horses every time Frau Blücher's name is spoken. The sudden, shrill neighs come out of nowhere, sending shivers down spines in the most absurd way. But what most people don't realize is that this gag was born from a blooper. During one take, the sound department accidentally triggered the horse effect at the wrong time before anyone had said her name. The cast immediately broke into laughter, and Wilder nearly ruined the shot by doubling over. Instead of simply throwing the mistake away, Mel Brooks took it one step further. He asked the sound crew to build on the gag in the later scenes, having the horses neigh louder and longer with each mention of Blücher's name. A simple timing error grew into one of the most famous running jokes of the film. Fans still debate whether there's a hidden meaning behind the joke. Some say Blooper sounds like German for glue, which would explain the horse's fear. Brooks never confirmed this, though he enjoyed the speculation. One thing that cannot be disputed, though, is that this accidental horse cue became a big part of the film's comic book, turning what was just a blooper into an unforgettable comedy device. Number 11. The speed of light question. Sometimes the funniest bloopers aren't physical accidents, but moments when an actor sneaks in a completely unexpected line. During one scene, Elizabeth turns to Frederick with an oddly intellectual question. Exactly how fast is the speed of light? The timing of the line was strange to begin with, but it became even funnier when Wilder, already teetering on the edge of laughter thanks to Feldman's antics, tried to answer with scientific seriousness. As Wilder recited the line, 186,000 miles per second, Marty Feldman chose to walk away with the scene by starting to throw props backstage and clowning about, turning spontaneous mayhem on what could have been a very circumspect reply. The very look on Wilder's face spoke of his anger at having to keep his character, with Feldman all but ruining the moment. This line, and Wilder's half-smirk and pause, were kept because Brooks thought that it felt incredibly genuine. Instead of a perfect performance, the audience was given a semblance of a character that was teetering on the line between comedy and seriousness, precisely the combination that made young Frankenstein so special. This weird question about physics in the mid-bloop scene would possibly seem out of place for a horror parody, but it was absolutely perfect at this moment. That was hilarious, but trust me, the upcoming slip will leave you grinning even more. Number 10. Peter Boyle's wig slipped. Bringing the monster to life in Young Frankenstein wasn't just about grunts and growls, it also required elaborate makeup and a carefully fitted headpiece. Peter Boyle endured hours in the makeup chair, with prosthetics glued to his face and a bulky wig that completed the flat-topped look of the classic Frankenstein monster. But sometimes, even the most professional setups fail in hilarious ways. During the incredibly lively operating table scene, where Frederick and his team performed miracles in bringing life to the monster, Boyle's wig began to slip away under the intense hot-set lights. At first, it was subtle, a slow angle that the crew could not catch. But Wilder and Terry Garr suddenly observed it in the middle of the shot and struggled to suppress their laughter as the fearsome monster became closer to a falling Halloween mask. Always a pro, Boyle didn't stop the scene at all, but continued with his usual deadpan groans, sounding like part of the act for the audience of that very scene. Mel Brooks, watching from behind the camera, said it was so priceless that he avowed not to even fix it in editing. This ended up being that just winked the wig offensively, as typical, at the frightfully hilarious spirit of the film. Number 9. The spontaneous howl. Marty Feldman had a gift for turning ordinary lines into unpredictable chaos, and one of his best on-set surprises came in the form of a completely unscripted howl. During a scene that was supposed to be eerie and suspenseful, Feldman suddenly tilted his head back and let out a long, exaggerated wolf howl. No one had expected it. Not Gene Wilder, not Terry Garr, and not even Mel Brooks. It was the howl that broke all the tension in the room. Wilder, as Dr. Frankenstein, was fighting hard to keep a straight face. It got the better of him soon enough. Garr just burst into a laugh. Peter Boyle couldn't keep a straight face behind the monster face either. The crew itself laughed so loud that the take had to be reshot, but Brooks was far too enamored of it. He urged Feldman to keep it coming whenever he felt like it. The howl instantly broke the tension. Somehow, not all of his howls cut through the final mix, although included here as one. Most fans presume that it was scripted, but they will not know that this mischief was actually behind the imagination of their beloved Feldman. The spur-of-the-moment howl soon found a small, yet indelible part in the chaotic surface of young Frankenstein's humor, proof that the funniest scares are often those that take the audience by surprise. Number 8. Elizabeth's wig came loose. Madeline Kahn was already a comedy legend by the time she played Elizabeth in Young Frankenstein. Her character was designed to be larger than life, glamorous, dramatic, and always just a little over the top. Part of that look came from her elaborate hairpieces, which were carefully styled to fit the exaggerated 1930s aesthetic. But sometimes, even Hollywood wigs have a mind of their own. At one point in the action, as Kahn was getting through one of Elizabeth's delightfully melodramatic lines, her wig began to slide off. It did not move in a very dramatic way at first, just tilting slightly off-center with the threat of ruining the shot. Kahn broke character and exaggerated all facial expressions and movements so that it looked almost as if it were part of Elizabeth's charm and vanity rather than an unfortunate wig perm. The cast found it hard to keep straight faces, and reportedly, Wilder had to look away not to burst into laughter. Brooks, always a fan of keeping natural chaos in the film, decided the take was too funny to discard. Kahn made it into pure comic gold, rather than a wardrobe disaster, by seamlessly integrating this accident into her performance. The hair slip was enough to prove that even though everything she did was amazing, it just made her character that much more memorable. Number 7. The coffee cup continuity error. Continuity errors are the bread and butter of blooper hunters, and Young Frankenstein has one that fans still love pointing out: the mysterious coffee cup. In one scene, Dr. Frankenstein is engaged in conversation, appearing cool and composed while holding a cup in his hand. The problem? Between cuts, the cup seems to vanish and reappear in completely different hands, sometimes in the left, sometimes in the right, and occasionally not at all. One would ordinarily shoot another take to cover such slips during production. However, Young Frankenstein was made at such a rapid pace, and with so many improvisational hours, that many small continuity flubs slipped through unnoticed. Rather than feeling like mistakes, they worked seamlessly into the overall parody tone of the movie. In fact, the very tackiness they were mocking. The very tackiness of the movie itself is a spoof of the old horror classics from the 1930s, which were often full of jump cuts and mismatched props. Reports surfaced that Mel Brooks found the editing room error rather amusing and hardly felt it worth excising. The result? The coffee cup, not disappearing, turned out to be one of the hidden Easter eggs in the film. A small slip that fit right into the exaggerated comic world with charm almost chaotically overt. Number 6. The Monsters' Dinner Scene Blooper. The Monsters' Dinner Scene was supposed to highlight Peter Boyle's intimidating yet oddly sympathetic presence. Dressed in his formal clothes and seated at the table, the monster was meant to convey both awkwardness and dignity. But when you're covered in heavy makeup, strapped into an uncomfortable costume, and surrounded by fragile props, chaos is bound to happen. Boyle stands up from the dinner table in one take and inadvertently knocks over a prop carelessly. The sound was so loud and unexpected that it almost ruined the scene. Gene Wilder, however, was not to be robbed of that moment. Remaining in character as Dr. Frankenstein, he improvised a gag line about the monster's clumsiness being deliberate. The timing was so sharp that the unscripted moment mixed seamlessly into the performance. The crew howled inwardly as the incident morphed into pure comedy gold. Mel Brooks fell in love with it, deciding to keep the take, for it just matched the monster's awkward persona so perfectly. They could have gone back to do the scene again, but this blunder became part of the character's charm. What might have been a slip transformed into an understated gag that made the monster more human, and all the funnier. Number 5. The stubborn fake leg. During one of the grave robbing scenes, Frederick and Igor are supposed to dig up a body to continue Frankenstein's experiment. The prop team had rigged a fake leg to stick out of the dirt for a quick gag. Simple enough, except the leg didn't want to cooperate. When Marty Feldman went to tug it free, the prop got stuck in the set. Rather than break character, Feldman fully committed to the task at hand and exaggerated his struggle, pulling and twisting the leg while mumbling little improvised grunts under his breath. Beside him, Gene Wilder, who did his best to keep a straight face, almost cracked up as Feldman transferred the antics to the stubborn leg. Finally, in a most spectacular fashion, the prop broke away, landing them both backward into the dirt amidst hysterics from the crew. Mel Brooks loved this energy and encouraged Feldman to continue playing it clumsily on the next takes, thus giving Igor's antics an extra layer of slapstick charm. It started with a simple prop malfunction and turned out to be the most classic demonstration of how young Frankenstein turned mistakes into comic gold. Number 4. The lightning malfunction. Few scenes in Young Frankenstein are as iconic as the moment when Dr. Frankenstein tries to bring the monster to life. The laboratory set was filled with vintage-looking equipment, sparking coils, and dramatic lighting designed to mimic the classic horror films of the 1930s. But with all those practical effects, things didn't always go according to plan. Then there was one where, instead of the dramatic crackle and spark which the script demanded, the lightning rig just fizzled. Instead of that grand, terrifying bolt, it sputtered weak, flickering, hardly torch-lit. Rather, it looked like a broken lamp than a scientific breakthrough. The anticlimax was so sudden that it made Gene Wilder laugh, and other crew members dashed to see what went wrong instead. Marty Feldman, always quick to grab an opportunity to make a sarcastic comment, reportedly made such comments that sent the entire set into hysteria, ruining the take entirely. Mel Brooks, however, had a different plan in mind. He thought not to delete that footage, and later made the malfunction idea add more to the humor in the monster's chaotic resurrection. What was supposed to result in horror turned out to be a parody of failed science experiments, quite the kind of comedy that characterized the film's spirit. Number 3. Elevator Shake Accident. The massive laboratory elevator in Young Frankenstein was designed to look like something out of a vintage horror movie, clunky, metallic, and just a little bit ominous. But in reality, the set piece was anything but stable. During one scene, when Dr. Frankenstein and his assistants were supposed to ride the elevator smoothly to the upper level, the contraption began to wobble dangerously. Terry Garr, who played Inga, let out a real scream of terror when the platform started moving unexpectedly. Such an ear-piercing and unscripted portion made the scene even tighter. It didn't take long for the crew to realize what had happened, and instead of cutting, Gene Wilder and Marty Feldman carried on perfectly in character. Wilder continued as though the whole incident was supposedly in the plan, while Feldman exaggerated his moves so that the elevator ride would feel bumpy. Mel Brooks loved that moment's rawness and decided to keep that unscripted Gerard moment instead. What could have been a technical failure became comedy gold, with slapstick danger and character-based humor. The elevator shake incident made the lab fit even more for the kind of unpredictable events this movie would throw at audiences, since it was meant to reflect the movie's paradox of chaos, parody, and improvisation. Number 2. Wilder and Brooks' laughing fits. If there's one behind-the-scenes story that perfectly captures the spirit of Young Frankenstein, It's the uncontrollable laughing fits shared by Gene Wilder and Mel Brooks. Wilder, who co-wrote the script with Brooks, was known for his intensity and commitment to staying in character. But on this set, the comedy was so sharp and the improvisation so constant that even he couldn't resist breaking down in laughter. Brooks admitted at a later stage that shooting sometimes took twice as long as expected, simply because Wilder could not control his laughter. At times, the blame fell on the sly ad-libs from Feldman. On other occasions, it was Peter Boyle's near-perfectly timed grunt, but mostly, it was Brooks himself who would set off the chain reaction. While directing from behind the camera, Brooks would burst into laughter at the actors' deliveries and ruin the take completely. The sound department even had to re-record portions because his laughter bled into the microphones. Instead of treating it as a problem, Brooks encouraged the chaos. He believed the uncontrollable laughter was proof that they had struck comedy gold. And indeed, he was right. When things got that high energy on the set, the result translated directly to the screen. These laughing fits were much more than mere accidents. They formed the heartbeat of a film that lived on joy, spontaneity, and freedom of sorts. Hold on tight, because our number one pick takes the comedy to a whole new level. Number 1, the photo that wasn't edited. Among the many legendary bloopers from Young Frankenstein, one stands out because it lives on not just in the film, but in a single photograph. Fans have circulated an image for years showing Gene Wilder doubled over in laughter, with Marty Feldman breaking character beside him. Many assumed the picture was staged for publicity or doctored to look funnier, but it wasn't. This photo is completely real, captured in the middle of an outtake, when Wilder simply couldn't hold himself together any longer. A moment from Feldman's ad-lib went awry, causing Wilder to burst into genuine hysterics, doubling over with laughter as his dignified doctor. Frankenstein persona dissolved. The shot was supposed to be a staged promo shot, but it turned into a picture of chaos, a rare moment in which the actors seemed to be enjoying the madness as much as their audience would later. Mel Brooks loved these moments. To him, they were emblematic of what the film was all about: pure, slapstick fun, raw improvisation, and comedy born out of mishaps. The untamed shot stands as a metaphor for the production, a testament to the fact that behind the black-and-white spectacle parodying monsters and mad scientists was a cast and crew who just couldn't stop cracking up, even while supposedly shooting a serious scene. And that wraps up our countdown of Young Frankenstein's funniest hidden bloopers. Which one had you laughing the most? Let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear your favorite. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe for more behind-the-scenes movie secrets, and ring the bell so you never miss a video. And if you're ready for even more surprising slip-ups, go ahead and click the next video on your screen. The laughs don't stop here.